"I'm not happy," President Trump admitted for the first time after weeks of calls with Putin, while the Kremlin insisted Russia would stay the course in Ukraine. On July 3rd, Russian President Vladimir Putin and his U.S. counterpart Donald Trump held their fourth phone call in the past 6 weeks, marking the sixth interaction between the two Russian and American leaders since the beginning of the year.
During the call, Vladimir Putin noted that Russia played an important role in the formation of U.S. statehood. Also, Vladimir Putin informed Trump about the implementation of the Istanbul agreements between Russia and Ukraine.
Of course, during this call, the situation in Ukraine was discussed. So Vladimir Putin informed Trump that Russia will not step back from its goal of removing root causes that led to the confrontation in Ukraine. And at the given moment, Kremlin aide Ushakov says that Putin and Trump will continue their communication, i.e. more contacts are scheduled. There was no concrete discussion about the third round of Russia-Ukraine negotiations, said Yuri Ushakov. New details of phone call are coming. Also, there is the information that during the call with Putin, Trump raised the issue of an early cessation of fighting in Ukraine. So I think it is a mutual issue. And here, Vladimir Putin repeatedly draws attention of his American counterpart to the elimination of root causes of the situation in Ukraine itself.
История, но действительно здесь российский президент вновь и вновь обращает внимание американского коллеги на важное устранение первопричин самой ситуации.
The president's aide Yuri Ushakov also noted that Putin-Trump conversation was on the same wavelength. It was sensory and concrete. Besides the end of fighting in Ukraine, they also discuss the future development of Russia-U.S. relations.
Speaking to the press at Joint Base Andrews, Trump said that he and Putin had discussed the situation in Iran and Ukraine.
We had a call. It was a pretty long call. We talked about a lot of things, including Iran. And we also talked about, as you know, the war with Ukraine. And I'm not happy about that. I'm not happy about that. No, I didn't make any progress with him today at all. Well, we're going to see. Steve is a great guy. He's a great negotiator. Iran does want to speak, and I think they'd like to speak to me. And it's time that they do. We're not looking to hurt them. We're looking to let them be a country again. They got beat up, and they were both exhausted, frankly. But Iran really got beat up, and I think they want to meet. I mean, I know they want to meet, and if it's necessary, I'll do it. But Steve is involved and very much involved, and he's done a fantastic job. All right, one more.
Kremlin aide Yuri Ushakov stated that while Putin expressed readiness to negotiate for a political solution to the conflict, he also emphasized that Russia will not back down.
Dear colleagues, the situation around Iran and the Middle East as a whole was discussed in great detail. The Russian side emphasized the importance of resolving all contentious issues, disagreements, and conflict situations exclusively by political and diplomatic means. It was agreed to continue contacts on this matter between the foreign policy departments, the defense ministries, and between presidential aides. Naturally, the Ukrainian issue was discussed. Donald Trump again raised the issue of a speedy end to military action. Vladimir Putin, for his part, noted that we continue to seek a political and negotiated solution to the conflict. He informed about the progress of the implementation of the humanitarian agreements that were reached during the second round of direct Russian-Ukrainian contacts in Istanbul. He also noted the readiness of the Russian side to continue the negotiation process. Our president also said that Russia will seek to reach the goals it has set that is, the elimination of the well-known root causes that led to the current state of affairs, to the current acute confrontation, and Russia will not back down from these goals. We proceed from the fact, and I think that the American side understands this perfectly well, that the negotiations will be bilateral in nature between representatives of Russia and Ukraine. The specific content of a possible third round was not discussed. But as I have already noted, our president stated that we are ready to continue the negotiation process, i.e., we are ready to hold the next third round. No, there was no specific discussion about the possibility of a meeting between Putin and Trump, but you know very well that this idea hangs in the air, and if necessary, a specific agreement will be reached on this. But this time, this topic was not touched upon.
According to Ushakov's statement, on this occasion, Vladimir Putin also mentioned that just before speaking with Donald Trump, he had met with representatives of the Russian business community. One of the ideas proposed during that meeting was to organize an exchange of films promoting traditional values that both Russia and the Trump administration hold dear. President Trump immediately responded positively, saying he greatly liked the idea. The two sides also discussed in detail the situation regarding Iran and the Middle East. The Russian side emphasized the importance of resolving all controversial issues, differences, and conflicts through political and diplomatic measures. The two leaders agreed to maintain contact on this matter through their respective diplomatic agencies, defense ministries, and presidential aides. Trump's stance this time was assessed as unusually negative. In the 5 phone calls with President Putin since January, the White House occupant had consistently expressed optimism about progress toward a Russia-Ukraine ceasefire. The two leaders also affirmed their desire for joint economic projects, particularly in the fields of energy and space. The decision to halt U.S. weapons aid to Ukraine was not mentioned during the phone call. However, earlier, right after the Pentagon announced the suspension of certain air defense missiles and high-precision weapon supplies to Ukraine, the Kremlin welcomed the U.S. move, stating that less weaponry for Kiev would help end the conflict sooner.
As far as we understand, the reason for this decision was empty stockpiles, a shortage of these weapons in storage. In any case, the less weaponry is supplied to Ukraine, the closer the end of the special military operation.
According to the Financial Times, following his phone call with the Russian president, U.S. President Donald Trump is also scheduled to hold a phone call with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on July 4th to discuss the abrupt halt of certain critical U.S. weapons deliveries to Kiev, during which Zelensky is expected to raise the issue of potential future arms sales contracts. Meanwhile, Zelensky is seeking support from European Union leaders during a visit to Denmark. He emphasized the need to strengthen military cooperation amid uncertainties regarding U.S. weapons aid. Zelensky expressed hope that he could hold a phone call with Trump as soon as possible to discuss the suspension of aid.
Of course, we count on continuation of American support, but there are some items which it's a pity, but which Europe doesn't have for today, especially when we speak about PAC-3. I mean that missiles for Patriot systems. This is crucial. What about our bilateral relation with the United States and this support? So I hope that maybe tomorrow or in close days, these days, I will speak about it with the President Trump. Can I just ask you? I don't know. I'm not sure that they have a lot of common ideas, common topics to talk, because they are very different people. But if we speak about Ukraine, we supported from the very beginning the idea of President Trump, unconditional ceasefire. I said it not once that we are ready for any kind of format of meeting. And I think that in Russia, only Putin real decision makers. That's why we need meeting on the level of leaders if we really want peace.
On the ground, Russia launched a large-scale UAV attack on Ukraine's capital just hours after U.S. President Donald Trump expressed frustration over the lack of progress in ending the Ukraine conflict during a phone call with his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin. This Russian UAV attack on Kiev was one of the most intense in weeks, lasting over 6 hours.